The movie begins in space, where a capsule is floating among a storm of meteors. The Pilgrim 7 crew makes an effort to retrieve the capsule because it has a sample from Mars within. Rory Adams, an engineer, emerges and tries to use a device on the ship to grab the capsule. The capsule smashes against the mechanism, but it is captured. Hugh Derry, a biologist, examines the material they found. Although it initially just looks like an amoeba, it gradually develops its own limbs and even starts to move. Hugh confirms that the specimen is alive, which thrills the crew. People on Earth are interested in the crew's missions and the possibility of finding new life outside of Earth. In Times Square, elementary school students from all across New York are gathered as they send messages and inquiries to the cast in real time. A teenager approaches the crew and announces that her school has chosen to give the name the creature Calvin. Dr. David Jordan, Captain Miranda North, Commander Ekaterina Katgul of Kina, and pilot Sho Murakami are a few of the other crew members on board the International Space Station. They all get close because of their shared mission and private lives, such as Sher's wife having their daughter back on Earth. They discover Calvin has a brain, muscles, and vision as they continue to research it. Calvin stops moving and becomes silent as a result of a malfunctioning lab apparatus. After the machinery is repaired, Hugh enters and uses an electroshock wand to try to resuscitate Calvin. Calvin is roused from sleep and encircles Hugh's right hand after a brief shock. Affixing himself to the glass plates as he enlarges and grows in size. He tightens his grip on Hugh's hand and grabs the wand, shattering it in the process. Hugh eventually collapses when Calvin breaks his hand. In order to remove the glove from its containment cube, Calvin grabs the broken wand and uses it. The crew's lab rat is subsequently placed in a cage with him. When the rat approaches Calvin, he wraps it and eats it, expanding even more. Calvin encircles Rory's leg as he attempts to help Hugh out, causing David to lock the door on Rory. Rory attempts to burn Calvin with an incinerator after lifting him off his leg with an oxygen candle but runs out of fuel. Calvin quickly moves into Rory's mouth. Rory is gradually killed from the inside until he stops moving. As he escapes through a vent, Calvin crawls out and grows more larger. The crew uses gold foil to wrap Rory's body. Hugh claims that the absence of oxygen on Mars is what likely kept an organism like Calvin dormant for so long and suggests that it may have been the cause of the extinction of life on Mars. The team then tries to contact Earth, but their communications are being interrupted by their damaged systems. Kat wears an EVA suit and exits the station to solve the issue. Calvin, who is regrettably outdoors, begins to encircle Kat's outfit. When Calvin cuts into Kat's coolant system, her helmet fills with dangerous liquids as she attempts to return to the station. While Kat is drowning, David tries to save her by pulling her back inside, but Kat purposely stays outside to keep Calvin from getting back inside. Calvin struggles to go back inside as Kat passes away and her body drifts out into space. Even if it means bringing in Calvin back inside the station, the remaining crew members need the remaining fuel to escape their decaying orbit and return to their appropriate position. By locking themselves inside their sleep pods and releasing the oxygen out, the crew intends to deprive Calvin of oxygen. Hugh begins to experience cardiac arrest, so they restart the oxygen. However, a little while later, they find Calvin attached onto Hugh's leg, enlarged, with tentacles and what appears to be a face. The other three flee after he murders Hugh. Sho enters his slumber pod as Calvin makes an attempt to break through. David and Miranda can keep an eye on Calvin's movements because Calvin ingested a tracker from Hugh's outfit. With Hugh's corpse, they attempt to entice Calvin away. They quickly discover that a Soyuz spacecraft without Calvin inside was dispatched by Earth Control to return the crew to Earth. When the station docks into the capsule, Sho has the opportunity to exit his pod. As he tries to board the capsule, a breach from the shoddy docking causes an explosion. Sho ends up being sucked out of the station as a result. David and Miranda begin to accept their destiny as the oxygen levels on the station begin to decline and their trajectory returns them to the orbit's decaying region. They are aware that attempting to return to Earth's atmosphere could result in their deaths, but Calvin has a chance of surviving. David then recalls that they can use two of the station's escape pods. While one would return to Earth, Calvin would need to be manually overridden to send him into far space. The idea is to deprive Calvin of oxygen once more in order to entice him into the pods. David and Miranda carry out their strategy. While he tries to get Miranda home, David entices Calvin into his pod. One pod is thrown off track as the pods travel through a cloud of debris. Inside David's pod, Calvin attacks him and starts to encircle him. One of the pods makes an oceanic landing on Earth close to a boat carrying two fishermen. David is found to be stuck in some sort of ooze when they arrive at the pod. Meanwhile, Miranda is launched into outer space while screaming helplessly. David tries his best to stop the fishermen, but they open the pod. Later, two more boats arrive,